Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 844, written by Rinzy2000. My lost earring returned to me after 2 years. So, a couple of years ago, I started a new job. As I was coming out one night from work, I did what a lot of us would do and ripped off my surgical mask to breathe in the fresh air. When I did it, I felt the earring come out of my ear because it got caught on the mask ear loop. I heard it hit the ground and I took my phone out to look for it, but it was a dark parking lot and I just couldn't find it. It was a small white gold hoop. I searched for it the next day during the daylight, but was unable to find it. It's a busy parking lot in the city, so I figured it was long gone. I was bummed because it was my favorite daily wear earring, and they were not super cheap to replace. I can only wear gold because everything else gives an allergic reaction, so I just haven't worn earrings for the last 2 years for fear of the same thing happening again. I put the remaining earring in my jewelry box because I keep my scrap gold jewelry in case I need to get something repaired. Well, today, almost exactly 2 years later, I noticed something on my sun porch that was shiny. I reached down and picked up a small, white gold hoop earring. I thought it was weird because I remembered specifically putting it in my jewelry box in the little drawer where I keep my scrap gold. I went to the jewelry box and sure enough, there it was. So now I have the original set and no explanation how the missing earring made it back home. I have regularly vacuumed and swept that sun porch over the last 2 years, and I specifically remember the incident in the parking lot because I was so bummed out about losing my earring. Case notes for file 844. My lost earrings returned to me after 2 years. It keeps striking me, sort of like a lightning bolt, that these objects returning, it feels like a will is involved, and I've mentioned before now, but I do think there are spirits, entities, echoes, people from the past, maybe out of boredom. What else are you going to do besides roam around? You might as well help people, right? They're helping to return items that are lost. Unless it's just a random happenstance from the universe, like the object de-renders, there's an error, and then somehow it's fixed, maybe by a server GM in the real world. It's possible too, but if it's a GM in the real world or a spirit, there's some force involved that has a will to return objects. It doesn't seem like it's a natural phenomenon, because it's too precise. After 2 years, that is so much travel through space-time that it has to be some sort of force involved with a will and mind of its own. And again, I think it explains why the objects returned often seem to be high value. Why bother if it's just a tennis ball, right? Case file number 845, written by bunnyhope. I heard it drop, and then it vanished. This was late at night, maybe around 2 a.m. Everyone living in my house was asleep and I was just scrolling through Twitter and TikTok. I had my AirPods in my ear and the case right next to me in bed. I had gotten up to grab another cover from my closet when I heard something drop. I assumed it was my Fire Stick, but when I returned to my bed it was still there. So I thought no biggie. It must have been my AirPod case. But when I went to look for it, I couldn't find it. I looked under my bed and under my dresser, but I still couldn't find the damn AirPod case. Since it was so late at night, I just decided to leave my AirPods on my nightstand and look for the actual case the next morning. The next morning, I began to clean my room, and I mean deep clean. I moved my bed, my dresser, my nightstand, everything and anything. I even looked in my shoes and deep in my closet, but never found my case. I know it was late at night and I was tired, but I remember having it next to me and I remember hearing something fall to the ground. I even asked my mom to help look, but neither of us ever found anything. It was so strange and frustrating because 1, they were expensive, and 2, my room isn't even that big, so it's not like it's part of my room that I never got to. To this day, I never found the AirPod case and I had to end up buying a new one. Thankfully, they weren't as expensive. Case notes for file 845. I heard it drop, and then it vanished. Right, so here we are again, another object that's vanished, but this time it didn't return, because I guess it's not as expensive. There's just not as much importance to return it. Although it's still annoying for you, I'm sure. It's an AirPod case, which, it's not nothing. What always gets me about these stories though is that you hear it drop, you know it actually fell to the ground, you had it,
and then it's just gone. These objects are just de-rendering before our ears, not our eyes, before our ears, and that still counts as being crazy.
Case file number 846, written by elgringojefe, The Sleeping Anomaly. I've had things seemingly show up in weird places before, but this one is one of the most difficult to explain for me. I came home from work the other night, pretty tired, and ate, showered and drank like one beer, went to pee and hopped into bed, plugged my phone into the charger that reaches to my bedside and googled a couple random things like logging into my bank, etc., then put on some YouTube documentary so I could go to sleep. I fell asleep probably around 10, with my phone still plugged in and on top of me, with a video playing, and woke up randomly at 5 a.m. I was still in bed. I noticed after a few seconds that my phone wasn't plugged in, so I started feeling around for it, thinking I'd just popped it off the charger accidentally in my sleep. I started panicking and realized that my phone wasn't in my bed at all, and turned on the lights and looked around. It wasn't in my room. My bedroom door had also been closed like I had closed it before sleeping. I had to pee pretty bad like I normally do in the mornings, and when I went to the bathroom, my phone was randomly on the side of my bathtub next to the toilet. I checked YouTube and it had played the entire video I fell asleep watching, but didn't play anything else. My Safari history showed nothing else after me checking my bank account. My phone somehow had a nearly full charge, which I thought was weird since I had only just plugged it in when I started watching the YouTube video. My only theory was that maybe I had sleepwalked into the bathroom to go pee that night, but I have my doubts since I haven't been known to sleepwalk before. And what's weirder is I know I didn't use that toilet in my sleep that night because my fill valve was broken, and I would have to remove the lid on the tank and activate the fill valve with my hand, and there was no waste in the bowl that morning. I still haven't figured out exactly how it happened, and I'm pretty confused. I know I wasn't drunk either. I'm guessing either I'm a very high-functioning sleepwalker and had no idea, or something crazy happened.
Case notes for file 846. The Sleeping Anomaly. Right, I'm not entirely well versed on sleepwalking. I don't know how common it is for it to emerge suddenly later in life. To my limited knowledge, it seems to emerge when we're younger, and it's a habit that forms from there. So is it possible that you suddenly developed sleepwalking? Or maybe you've had it and no one ever told you? Less likely on that. If it suddenly emerged, I could see that as a viable possibility. You woke up, you sleepwalked, you brought your phone into the bathroom, didn't really do anything in there because you couldn't use the bathroom as you described, and then just went back to bed. And maybe there was a tiny gap, but as soon as you got back into bed, you really woke up for real. Something like that, I could see makes sense. With your phone being charged up, presumably after many hours of being plugged in, is that weird? For me, my phone charges pretty quickly, so that seems normal. If you did sleepwalk, then I assume you did it towards the end of the sleeping cycle, in which case, yeah, plenty of hours for it to charge up, and not many that was off charging. If it was some supernatural force, then it kind of feels like a possession event, because it does seem like your physical body did travel there to bring the phone there. Unless some entity just took it and brought it there, but why would they do that? Maybe you have a trickster on your hands.
Bonus file written by Tosorrowandback, The Chill of Sorrow. I live in a strange place, let's put it that way. I moved in here with my family last year. I'm 19 now. Looking for work, trying to make my own way in the world, you know? Anyhow, for the moment, I'm stuck here, and I hope that changes soon. In my room, the very first time I entered when I was bringing in boxes from the moving van, I felt a chill in my core. Nothing looked wrong, I just felt wrong. I think we've all seen Harry Potter by now, right? So how I describe the sensation is what I imagine it would feel like if you stood next to a Dementor. Dread and sorrow. I begged my parents to let me change rooms, but they wouldn't listen, and I wasn't going to tell them why because I can barely explain it now. I tried to fall asleep on the couch most nights when I could. My parents are early birds, so I'd sneak out to the couch. They'd often find me there in the mornings, but never punished me for it. Just thought it was weird. And they never mentioned feeling strange when they came into my room, which they often did. So, is it just me? In my head? Maybe. I don't think so. When I'm in my room, I can't focus. I can't imagine my life being happy. It's like something is taking my essence away. The only good news is that when I leave the room, it all comes flooding back to normal and then some. It's an insane roller coaster.
Case notes for the bonus file, The Chill of Sorrow. So, how I think about ourselves and our spirits, they're signals. Ripples in a pond, they travel, but in this case the ripple is perpetual, and it's enclosed within a given environment. It doesn't ripple out forever. They're like reverberations in the fields of reality, where we have the EM field, you have the Higgs boson field, and all these various fields where excitations of the field is what we view as reality. If you apply that to a human being and their soul, if a soul exists in some field that we haven't quite calibrated or measured yet, well, the excitation of that field would depend on the person. It would vary based on, like any other particle, it would have properties. And I think this field depends on our character, our moral fiber. So if we're good people, the excitation is going to be different from someone that's very negative. And I think even after you die, there's an imprint left behind. I think the reverberation in the field is reduced. I think it's more of a fragment of what was there before, but it still exists. And I think you describe it pretty well, like the Dementor, where it's like sapping your energy and your will to be positive, or your ability to be positive for the future. But then as soon as you leave, the interaction stops. It's like the electrical field, where there's a very strong force, but as soon as you leave, it doesn't have any effect on you anymore. It seems very related to fields and signals. Now that said, it's interesting that your parents didn't seem to feel anything when they entered your room. Or maybe they did, but they didn't want to admit it to themselves or you. They want to be serious people that don't entertain, not magic, but just anomalies or things that aren't entirely understood yet. They did feel that, and they didn't want to punish you for not sleeping in your room. That makes a lot of sense to me. That your parents felt it too, they just wouldn't admit it, but they also didn't want to punish you for trying to avoid it. I could see that fitting pretty well. And that's the end of my notes for today. Enjoy your evening, folks. Kinetic Symphony, signing off.